Hi, everyone. It is an honor. It is a delight to be talking a second time with Jamar Nicholas on this episode of Words, Images, and Worlds. Jamar, welcome back. Thanks for coming back.
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me back on. I'm really excited to talk to you tonight. It's always a pleasure.
It's great to talk with you as well. And ironically, the last time we were talking, you were in a hotel room. You were, I think, on a tour. There was a flag in the background, and I said something about voting for you, which I totally
Hmm.
would do still.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
tonight, I'm hoteling it for slightly different reasons. Hurricane
yeah,
uh, Helena, I think it is, or Helene,
yeah.
has been coming through, but delighted to meet a port in a storm. It's great to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure. The pleasure is all mine.
Oh, well, and likewise, and likewise. Now you have a new book that is coming into the world. This is Worst Friends Forever, is that right?
Yes, Leon, Worst Friends Forever is
Ah,
at the moment of our recording will be out next Tuesday, so October 1st.
very cool, very
Yeah,
cool.
I'm
Uh,
very excited.
and it must be rewarding to get to tell not just one story, but to keep getting to explore this world and tell this unfolding story.
Yeah, it really is. One of the things that I'm still learning on the job is, I'm very fortunate to be in a space where I'm able to tell my stories, especially with having Scholastic behind me, with the giant engine that they have. But also, it's interesting, Jason, that I'm doing a series, and
Mhm.
that's its own makeup, which is a lot different than, say, you had a standalone summer beach read type of book or something like that, that even has its own kind of like review season. And, those things are always like on somebody's list because it's a great cozy, fireplace read. But when you're doing a series, even that kind of attention is different because people are just kind of waiting to see the next one.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's changed the way that I'm thinking about even publishing or, publishing the books and making sure that the stories are engaging and rewarding so that people want to know what happens next. What happens
Mhm.
next? That's the most important part. But yeah, no, it's a really great club to be in. And I just kind of look at the other people that have had really successful series as, that's my research. It's like, how did Kazu Kibuishi do Amulet for like 5,000 years? That's what, you know what I mean? So that's kind of how I keep from going insane.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you mentioned there's like a community here, and people sometimes ask me about like the future of comics or what I think it's going to be. And there's
Mm-hmm.
this very cool space. I mean, there's like the Marvel and DC world, there's the indie world, and then there's this really cool middle grades and like all ages graphic novel space. So,
Yeah.
speaking of rewarding, that's got to be a great club to be part of as well, with people like Jerry Craft and Raina Telgemeier and some of
Yeah,
those folks.
yeah, and I'm very fortunate to be able to say that I'm friends with those people.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
it's a really, I mean, we everybody in the comics world says, "Oh, comics, it's so close." It's really not in your best interest to have beef with somebody because somebody will find out about it. It's a really small group, but just say kid lit authors, it's just as small, but also just as great. Speaking of that, I just came back last night from Chappaqua, New York. I was at the Chappaqua Kids Book Festival
Nice,
out,
nice.
and it's amazing. I think there were 165 authors at this event, and it was mobbed, and it was wild. But it's also like a little bit of a family reunion. There's a lot of hugs and a lot of, oh, how are you? When are you going to be? Come over for soup. Just with the authors. So it's a really interesting community that a lot of people don't really know much about. So I think we kind of take that kinship even more seriously.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you've gotten to sort of have a character here in Leon that you develop some kinship with. So, what's it like to kind of keep throwing things at Leon? Anything that we can expect that you want to not spoil, but maybe hint at, glimpse? Uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yes. So one a really cool part about creating this character and kind of putting him through his paces is that I originally created Leon maybe 20 something years ago. The character has been floating around in my head for a long time and kind of came out into the world in different iterations over the years. Originally, it was a comic strip. So
Mhm.
I think I did a year at kind of like a penny saver magazine where I was doing comic strips of Leon. The pacing's weird. There are a lot of things that didn't really work, didn't find their way into the graphic novels. So kind of like over the time of just trying to figure out what makes this kid work and what makes him tick. Now I'm at a place where at first I thought, well, Leon's the coolest kid at school. Everybody likes Leon, and then I was like, that's boring. Who
Mhm.
wants to
Mhm.
read that? Who wants to read about that? The kid who never, everybody hated that kid at school who never failed or never messed up or always dodged the pigeon poop. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
so uh, I like to let Leon kind of figure things out, on the fly. And this new book, Worst Friends Forever. If I could talk a little bit about this real quick, Jason.
Of course,
Uh,
of course.
in the first book, it's kind of like Leon's origin story. We find out what kind of kid this is, the world he lives in, and that he wants to be a hero, even though he doesn't have superpowers. Spoiler alert: he saves the day. We'll just
Mhm.
put that out there.
Mhm. Mhm.
So the crux of this new book is, and especially for kids, is what happens when everything you wanted you get. Like sometimes, sometimes the things you wish for are probably the worst things you should have.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so he saves the day, and now it's going to his head. He's walking around the hall like, you know, like the was it the Spider-Man 3
Uh-huh.
Peter Parker did,
Uh-huh.
like he's in that mode, like he's turned into a big jerk, and all of his friends are just kind of like, "What has gotten into you? This isn't the Leon that we know." And I explore friendship in this book, and kind of like what does it take, and what is the makeup of being a friend? And I think those are really strong themes, especially in that age group.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned kind of the cool kid, the kid that had it all together, and
Yeah,
I immediately thought of the cool kid that I was growing up with. And it was not me, spoiler
I was gonna
alert
say
with
it was
that.
you, right?
It wasn't. It wasn't. I know it's hard to believe. But now I'm 109 years old now. I look back and I'm looking at where people are, and it's kind of that myth, right? Like
hmm
being the hey, that stage in Peter Parker's dance scene,
hmm
that's still a tough act. That's still a
hmm
tough thing because there's kind
hmm
of that myth of the person that has it all together.
Right. And we usually know that's not real or it's not realistic. And um, uh, a big part of what has drawn me to telling the story in this new volume is if you can get in your time machine for a second, Jason, with me, and remember back to when you were a kid. And I'm sure you had friends. You may have had some best friends. I like to think about kid friendships are usually predicated on distance. Like the kid across the hall in my apartment building, we're the same age, so we're best friends. Or this kid has a Sega Genesis, we're best friends. We trade Nintendo cartridges or whatever. Like it's not much. There's not much there.
Yeah.
So when that's tested, is kind of where you figure all this stuff out. It's usually when things go sour is when you figure out, well, I don't like, what do you mean we're not friends anymore? Or like, why are you mad at me all of a sudden? You haven't really processed how that stuff works. We know the good part, but the bad part takes some work. So that's a giant part of this book.
Yeah, I love that. And the friends that come and go across time as well.
That's another thing. It's like, you know what? You may not be friends with people forever. Some people are but seasons in your life. You know what I mean? Those are all really good messages for kids to know.
Yeah, yeah. You were talking about the process of putting the series book out, which, of course, as a teacher, I love because when you find a book that a kid loves, you want to keep giving them something to read.
Mm-hmm.
And the tricky part is, teacher tip for listeners out there, don't buy book two in the series without buying book one. Buy book one and the entire, like let them in from the get-go.
Thank
But
you.
I also know there's kind of a journey to creating a graphic novel, being an author and artist. So what's that like for you? Raina Telgemeier talks about it as like, take your time and read it because it takes a long time to put those books together.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I agree with that. Sometimes my heart breaks when a kid goes, "Oh, I read your book like on my way to school." Like, yo, that was like 300 pages. You sure you really read it? Or you look at it really fast?
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, the process, and to what Raina says, is that there's so many steps, and I talk about icebergs a lot. I use that metaphor a lot. But the all the stuff beneath the water surface is the stuff no one thinks about. Kind of like, as a graphic novelist, people are like, oh, wow, this was a cool image, or that splash page was cool, or even my other comic book buddies ask, what page are you on? What
Hmm.
page are you
Hmm.
working on? How the pages come in. That's the language that we use with each other. And I'm like, yo, I'm still writing this, and the writing part of all this stuff. Not to say it doesn't take as much time as in the comic book world, but there's a lot of editorial involvement. There's a
Hmm.
lot of, depending on the content of what you're doing, you might have sensitivity readers. There's all these kind of like, like the Panama Canal, there's all these kind of channels and lots you
Hmm.
have to go through, not just, but at that ping, I'm done here. I'm going to start drawing this. So that I think is a little hard for people to understand, is that the writing is probably more intensive than the art in this world. Probably just because it's got to go into when your book winds up in a kid's hands, it's got to be, there's no DLC update patch for a
Right,
book.
right.
It's got to be right, or it's not going to work. So that's probably one of the biggest parts of it, is just making sure all the scripting and all that stuff is ready. So by the time you get to the art, you've figured out all of those issues, and you don't wind up in a cycle of revisions.
Hmm. Hmm.
And just as an artist, uh, there's a lot of, I kind of call them milestones, like from the script stage, well, actually from the synopsis stage to the script stage to laying out your thumbnails and doing all that. You want to make sure you're knocking out as many gremlins as possible by the time I get to the pencil and the ink, and this is done when I'm done with this page stage. Because it's really painful to go back and go, oh, you know what? Could you like redraw this whole page like I did
Mm.
already?
Yeah.
So it's labor intensive. Just on top of even the storytelling, it's just the crafting of a graphic novel takes a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I agree with what Raina said to that kid. Take your time.
There's a lot there, and
Yeah,
I mean, thinking about the page turns, thinking about like the way you build in mood, all of those kind
yeah,
of things, which is
yeah,
great for me as a teacher because I get to talk all about all of that stuff as well.
yeah. And what I love about talking to teachers who were taking the material that we're making and translating it in a way to the kids, like curriculum and things like that. Like I've been able to see some really cool resource guides for Leon Extraordinary. And I'm just
Hmm.
like, well, no one asked me anything about it. They just exist. Okay, that's cool. And I'm just like, wow, that's, you really like, you kind of like digging deep and kind of pulling these really great themes out of the work, and then kind of flipping it and giving it back to the kids to do something with. I think that's amazing. And teachers don't get enough credit. I'll say that right here on your program.
I'll echo that. Absolutely, I'll echo that. Yeah. And great to have authors, great to have artists. I've said this before on here, but folks who can share stories to take to the classroom because, I only have so many stories. I could tell stories from my youth and stories that I can think of, but great to have that community of voices as I'm working with young people too.
That's so cool. I appreciate you, Jason.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I know that you are headed to my area, somewhere in the North Carolina
Yeah.
area, and I know that you're getting ready to embark on a busy time. So anything that you'd like to mention about your journey ahead and where people can find out more information?
Sure. Well, this is really cool. This is a very exciting time for me that I'm about to embark on my tour for this book. I'm going to have like a 7 city tour, and like Chapelco was like the beginning of it.
Hmm.
I'm going to be in the Carolinas very soon for school visits. A lot of it is like kind of like like below the surface again. Talk about icebergs. A lot of it are school visits, like in different states and different cities that are sponsored by, really smart indie booksellers and people in the community that want to make sure that the kids have the books.
Hmm.
And a lot of that you can't put on a flyer because you should know what school I'm going to. You know what I'm saying? The
Yeah,
kids know, but Joe Internet shouldn't know what school I'm going to
true,
tomorrow at 6 o'clock.
true.
But there are a couple of public facing events. Like I have a really cool signing at Barnes and Noble in Philadelphia at the end of next week. And there's cool things like that where the public can come out and meet me and get books signed, and that's always really fun. It's really cool, and I'm really happy that I'm able to do that. And then I'm connecting with kids and families. To that point, I'll say just yesterday, we kind of broken the embargo date on Worst Friends Forever because the book comes out Tuesday,
Mm.
but I had books yesterday at this book festival,
Oh,
and
nice.
and it was great. Everything flew off the table. I was like done for the day at like an hour before the show was over. So I mean, the interest is there, and a lot of families were just like, "Oh wow, we're so happy the new book's out.
Hmm.
Give me two. Can you sign it to Oscar? Yeah, sure. That never gets old. So I just would like everybody to know, go check out the series. If you don't have kids, because that's another thing with this world that I'm in. All the stuff I draw and write are accessible at whatever age you are.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'll have people say, "Well, Leon's cool. I'm glad you're doing that. I don't have kids." I was like, "Well, I think you should read it anyway. You'll
Oh
see."
yeah,
Or at the very least, I'm sure kids.
yeah.
One of my favorite things are the new, like the free little libraries that people have, a little libraries popping up in their neighborhoods, like the little box on the edge of the neighborhood corner where you can put library books in and things like that. Buy some books for your neighborhood and give them to a kid who needs it. So
Yeah.
there's different ways to spread the love.
And that phrase all ages truly means all ages. Like I'm a big fantasy reader, but I don't have any like goblins in my life, at least not that I
Not,
know
not, not that you better look under your bed, just check.
of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean that's really a thing. It's just kind of like the weird kind of protection of genres where it's like, oh well, that's for. And I've said to people, I think there's a mystery there that you think kids stuff means like brush your teeth, 1 2 3, take a nap,
Hmm.
type of
Hmm.
language. But there's some really strong, cogent storytelling happening in the graphic novel space, in the middle grade space. So you might surprise yourself. They'll find something new.
You might learn something about yourself. It
That's
could totally
right.
happen.
That's right.
Um, well, I'll conclude with just another round of appreciation. And you were talking about school visits. For listeners out there, it is so cool for kids to actually get to see that there is a human being who makes these books. I don't know
Mhm.
what I thought when I was reading Batman in the 90s. I thought it just sort of came from somewhere I didn't really understand.
Yeah.
But that's another wonderful, wonderful part of school visits as well. So hopefully, listeners will kind of hear that and follow up and connect in that way.
Yeah, thank you. And
Mhm.
also, if for all the parents out there, if your kid comes home with a flyer that says, "This guy's coming to my school and, he's going to have books," you order a book and you go, I can't tell you how many times, Jason, after a school visit is over, that I get emails going, "Oh, my kid, is there a way to get the book?" Like
Mhm.
I don't know if it's in hesitancy or maybe that there's some FOMO there after the fact, but like support your school and who they're trying to bring in is just trying to help the kids out and enrich them.
True enough. True enough. Well, Jamar, it's always great to talk with you. I could talk with you for at least another hour, but I'm wishing you safe travels. I'm still voting for you, and absolutely glad to have you back anytime.
Oh, thank you so much, brother. It's great talking to you, and have a good night. And thanks to all your listeners and viewers out there.
Thank you so much. Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Thank you. You too.